MICU stands for Mobile Intensive Care Unit, and this week in East Brunswick, we'll take a look at one of these vehicles in action and speak with the paramedics who use the equipment that's in them to save lives here in East Brunswick and throughout Middlesex County. Later, we'll show you highlights from the Golden Bears Awards dinner held this past Sunday to honor the young football players and cheerleaders. We'll also see excerpts from the first annual Sentinel Spelling Bee, which saw local grade school children competing at Carl Sandburg School in Old Bridge. Later, Mary Tanascio of the Township Consumer Affairs Department will discuss get-rich-quick schemes. For our final news segment this week, we'll show you the Town Council's debate on the proposed Wheelabrator-Fry referendum, which was defeated 3 votes to 2.
I'm Chris Eldridge, the Assistant Coordinator of the Emergency Medical Service Department of Middlesex General University Hospital and St. Peter's Medical Center. Today I'm going to give you a brief orientation to what Mobile Intensive Care Unit is and how it operates and the various different communities that we do service. The Mobile Intensive Care Unit is a non-transport vehicle that is equipped to take 2 paramedics and advanced life support equipment to the scene of an emergency, be it an illness or an accident. And the paramedics will interact with the rescue squad members usually already on the scene to stabilize a patient no matter what the critical nature of the illness is, and then to transport that patient in the rescue squad ambulance to the hospital of the patient's choice. As far as a mobile intensive care unit is concerned, we have very little in the way of equipment that we take into a house. Now you may ask why the size of this vehicle and the way it's laid out. I'll explain that in a little while. But the equipment that we initially take in is found right here on these 6 trays. We have a radio, which enables the paramedics to talk to a physician at Middlesex General University Hospital Emergency Department. That connects in with a monitor, cardiac monitor and defibrillator, which is attached to the patient to read that patient's electrocardiogram and to shock the heart should the heart not be pumping effectively. This is called a medical jump kit, which has most of everything we'll need in an immediate emergency. A drug case, which carries mostly emergency drugs to restore heart rhythms or alter heart rhythms into a more effective pumping method. And these are called medical anti-shock trousers, which are used mostly in trauma cases. What they do is displace blood from the lower extremities and the abdomen into the central circulation, the heart, the lungs, the brain, and thereby getting the patient's blood pressure up again. And a trauma jump kit, which is sort of the other side of the medical jump kit. This equipment is usually taken in by the 2 paramedics. We pull out the radio, the monitor defibrillator, medical kit or trauma kit, and the drug box. So there are really only 4 pieces of equipment that go into an emergency scene. The local rescue squad we're working with will supply any other type of equipment that's needed, and certainly the majority of the manpower necessary at an emergency. The Mobile Intensive Care Unit has a variety of radios. The radios are used to get in contact with just about any first aid squad or police department in the area. Communications are very essential in this type of a service so that we're sure of what we're getting into, and also if the rescue squad has arrived, they can give us a report of the patient's condition before we arrive. Also, if the patient's condition does not warrant mobile intensive care unit services, we can be disregarded by the squad while we're en route, and we can also then go back immediately into service to be available for another call. The radios are set up in a control group deck. There are 4 distinctly different radios in this system. This first radio is a very high frequency radio, and it's set up for 32 channels. You see on the top here various modes, as they're called, and then on the bottom row there are decks. There are 4 decks, 8 modes, and 8x4 will give us 32 channels. The next one down is an ultra-high frequency radio that is used primarily for police communications, and the second one down is an identical unit to this but different frequencies. From here down, is what is called a biotelemetry radio system. It's also on UHF, or ultra-high frequency. The first deck is called a touch-tone steering system, which I'll explain in just a few minutes. The next one down is called a private line deck, which permits communications with various agencies, and if they're on the same frequencies, the two conversations from different agencies won't interfere with each other. And then down here is what is called a repeater. The small radio that I showed you before is a very low wattage output radio, which actually talks to this unit, and then this unit boosts the signal and sends the signal off to the hospital. The hospital then talks to the vehicle radio, and then the vehicle radio then in turn repeats the same message to the small field radio or APCOR at a house or at an accident scene. The touch-tone steering module that I described before is a method by which a user of the radio can change frequencies in this vehicle without coming back to the vehicle. There's a small touch-tone pad, much the same as a telephone touch-tone pad, on the radio, which will change the frequencies from 1, 2, 3, on up to 10. The telemetry system is 10 channels. They're used nationwide, which does cause for some confusion, or can cause for some confusion in radio frequencies with paramedics and first aid squads working in the field. Therefore, at Middlesex General University Hospital, there is a medical channel control board, or what is called Med Central, which allocates use of frequencies to all the various paramedic units in the area. Therefore, one hospital can't get a transmission from a paramedic unit in the field, and that the transmission should have gone to a different paramedic unit, and it's all very well controlled from that system. This looks very confusing. At times in an extreme emergency, you might think that people will get confused, but it's fairly simple once the system is understood by the operator, and that anybody realizes there are 4 different radios involved here. The other box on top was actually the siren. This is a siren with 3 different modes on it: a wail, siren, a yelp, and a high-low, which are over here. Everything's controlled by this knob. The radio can also be patched through the siren and to the top light bar where there's a speaker. And if we're out at the scene of an accident, we can change our radio or receptions actually to the speaker on top so everybody can hear what the communications are.
My name is Tim Bonsfer. I'm the president of the East Brunswick Rescue Squad, and I'm here to explain a little bit about how our procedures with the paramedics work. Upon receiving an emergency call from the East Brunswick Police, our alarm is put in. We get the nature of the call and location. Upon our arrival at the house, it is our responsibility to do the initial patient survey and assess the patient's vital signs. Once this is completed, we will advise the responding EMS unit as to what the type of call is and the patient's condition. Upon their arrival at the house, it then becomes a group effort between us and the EMS unit as to the patient's primary care. We'd like to take you downstairs now for a simulated demonstration of an actual emergency.
This is Jim Whalen from the Old Bridge Volunteer Fire Department, who's going to simulate our patient for the day. Jane and Tim from the East Brunswick Rescue Squad are finding out what the patient's chief complaint is, and they're going to start an initial assessment and treatment. Meanwhile, the paramedics are en route and will probably be arriving shortly. They've started oxygen for the patient. Now they're monitoring his blood pressure. Apparently his chief complaint is a chest pain. We're providing this simulation so that you'll have an idea of what to expect should the unfortunate occur and you need the services of the rescue squad and the mobile intensive care unit paramedics.
East Brunswick Medic 620. Be advised, you have a 39-year-old male. His chief complaint is chest pain.
The rescue squad is radioing to the paramedics en route the condition of the patient so that on their arrival, most of the information is already at hand and the treatment can occur that much quicker. The paramedics are arriving. Charlie and Vivian will receive the report, or already actually have received the report from the rescue squad personnel, and now they're starting to set up their equipment together. Many people who are ill have been somewhat overwhelmed by everything that occurs at the same time during one of these operations, but all the equipment is highly necessary. What the paramedics have brought in, aside from what the squad has already had at the scene, is a cardioscope so they can monitor the patient's electrocardiogram and to see that the patient does not start any lethal or near lethal arrhythmias, which are abnormal heartbeats. Taking the cardiogram now, and the other paramedic is auscultating or listening to the lung sounds to make sure that the patient is breathing adequately. Okay, the paramedics have received enough information so that they can call into the base station physician at Middlesex General University Hospital. Vivian is initiating communications with the doctor at this time, and she will send voice information to the doctor about the patient and send the electrocardiogram via the radio at the same time. Tim is getting an intravenous line ready. The physician will most probably, in a case of a chest pain, order that an intravenous line be started. Should any necessary medications be needed, they can be given immediately through the intravenous line. And now Vivian is sending the electrocardiogram to the doctor at the same time as she is talking. The other paramedic, meanwhile, is searching for a suitable vein for an intravenous infusion. Chances are, in a case of a chest pain case, the doctor will also order a analgesic or pain-relieving agent, which Vivian is starting to get ready to set up. Administering a nitroglycerin tablet to try to relieve the chest pain. Intravenous is running. And as soon as most of the initial therapy is completed, the squad and the paramedics will work together in getting the patient out of the house into the ambulance and then transported to the emergency department or hospital of the patient's choice. The Mobile Intensive Care Unit program for the southern portion of Middlesex County has been a tremendous effort of rescue squads, fire departments, hospitals, and other public service agencies to initiate this type of a service. The Old Bridge Volunteer Fire Department in East Brunswick was gracious enough to allow their building to be used to house the unit. The rescue squads, East Brunswick, South River, the Old Bridge Rescue Squads, Monroe Township, Spotswood, and Jamesburg have all been instrumental in getting this program going. as well as Middlesex General University Hospital, St. Peter's Medical Center, and Old Bridge Regional Hospital also involved in the operation of the program. The entire session to put this all together took roughly 6 months of meetings and working out operational aspects of the program. It was pretty much put together in 6 months, and we would like to, from Middlesex General University Hospital and St. Peter's Medical Center, like to thank all the individuals who put so much time and energy into this program.
Next on This Week in East Brunswick, we'll bring you excerpts from the Golden Bears Awards banquet, which took place Sunday at the Holiday Inn in North Brunswick. After opening comments by Master of Ceremonies Chuck Kimmel, keynote speaker J.T. Turner of the New York Giants spoke about his career and answered questions from the group. Each coach and cheerleader advisor praised their own group of kids and spoke highly of their coaching staff. Midget coach Joe Bashi was first to speak.
Here they are, the Southern Division champions, champions in more ways than just measured by their football record and their accomplishments on the field. I think it's pretty well recognized, but I'd like to say it anyway, that being in the football program involves more than just working with these boys and teaching them something about playing football and X's and O's. We try to instill in them the importance of what it means to accomplish something as a group and with a team concept. And we also hope that we teach them a little bit of something about the principles and the values of things that are going to be important to them as they go through life, not just putting on a football uniform.
Assistant coach Roger Palacio spoke for the Pee Wee team.
As you know, our Pee Wee season went well. We went a lot better if we had the same offensive line and offensive backs in there all year long. We had a lot of trouble keeping the same team because of the boys sick or couldn't play. And I think they did a fine job. If you could give them a round of applause for their year. Thank you. I want to thank this team. This is the first year that I've coached with the East Brunswick, and I want to thank this team for making it very enjoyable. And I hope to God that they play next year. Thank you very much.
Speaking for the junior Pee Wees was head coach Jay Kimball.
90% of our team was inexperienced, had never participated in an actual football game. This was their first year. And so we had a lot to teach them, and then they didn't believe us until they got out in the field and said, yeah, they were right. And it is a little different. And most of these boys, I think I'm only losing about 4 or 5, and some of them aren't here, and most of them are coming back next year, and some of them for 2 more years. And let me tell you one thing, these kids learned a lot of football, and you're going to hear from them. And with the new program and the new ideas that we have in registration, which has been a problem on the junior Pee Wee level, I think you're going to see a bigger squad on both the junior Pee Wee and the Pee Wees. And you're going to see even better teams out of these 2 squads.
The midget, Pee Wee, and Cub cheerleaders also received awards. Also honored at the banquet were East Brunswick's Little Scholar athletes. Here we see nearly 40 nominees, from which 5 winners were chosen: Stacy Arendt, Stephanie Davis, Mark Harmon, Mike Pilato, and Mike Spano. Congratulations to everyone, and best of luck to the Golden Bears for the 1983 season. On Wednesday, January 19th, the Sentinel newspapers held their first annual spelling bee at Carl Sandburg School in Old Bridge. Over 40 hopefuls from Old Bridge, Milltown, South River, East Brunswick, Spotswood, and Sayreville were on hand to try their skills. East Brunswick students did very well, with 4 placing in the top 6 spots. Michael Fleming, Tara Koffler, and Billy Hammer placed between 3rd and 6th. When all the others had been eliminated, only Michelle Cohen of East Brunswick and Sherry Chmielewski of South River remained to decide the contest. After a few tense minutes, with each speller near victory, Sherry won the contest. Here is the final word.
Try that one. Sophisticated. The actress was very sophisticated.
Sophisticated. S-O-P-H-I-S-T-I-C-A-T-E-D.
Hello, and welcome once again to Consumer Aware. I'm Mary Tenaccio, and I'm here today to talk to you about get-rich schemes. We call it Investors Alert. If you follow 10 guidelines that I will speak to you about today, it will prevent unscrupulous persons from separating you from your hard-earned money. Be cautious when strangers contact you cold. By cold, we mean a telephone call from someone you don't know, or someone knocking on your door or approaching you at a party or someplace of the same nature. Beware of fantastic promises of returns on your money. A too good to be true idea. Be aware of those. Keep away from any high-pressure sales, like tomorrow will be too late, or you have to do it now. Take a step backward, think about it. Remember, it's your money. Avoid investments on schemes where there is little information or no information at all in writing. Still be aware that even written information can be false, but if there is very little to read over or to take to someone that would be able to help you, turn away from it right in the very beginning. Be wary of investments sold on the basis of rumors or inside information. Always ask for their financial statements. Seek competent help and consult a registered stockbroker. Contact a government agency to check on licensing or the history of a company. For instance, your Consumer Affairs Office would be the office for you to call locally, and we would check out the company history for you. Deal with established businesses whose reputation is known in the local community. And when in doubt, wait. Do not risk losing your hard-earned money. If you have any questions concerning get-rich schemes or get-rich-quick schemes, before doing anything, please call our office. We're there every day from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We'd be more than happy to assist you. Thanks so much for listening today. See you again next week.
This week, the Township Council voted down the Mayor's request for a public referendum on the Wheeler-Bader-Fry issue. The Mayor said he was not willing to spend the $100,000 which it might cost the Township to continue its fight against Wheeler-Bader without a clear expression of approval from the public. Citing the possibility of low voter turnout or bad weather, the cost of the election, and other reasons, Joseph Hudak, Michael Baker, and Geraldine Weber disagreed with the proposal. Here are some excerpts from the Council's discussion and the public portion which followed.
We talked about the accountant finding over $100,000 at year's end. Why don't we use that $100,000 for this purpose instead of just going out to a referendum and getting it that way? A second alternate is probably find some cuts in the budget. And with the homeowner and everybody else, you're going to have a number of people are going to have raises in taxes, you're going to have raises in water, you're going to have the revaluation, and it tells the people of East Brunswick that maybe we don't know how to manage our money, and we're going to ask them for another $100,000. It's very disturbing to me to go around and ask them when I feel that we could make a number of cuts in the budget. We knew that we were going to hire a lawyer. We knew we were going to go into this expense, and I don't see for the last year where we didn't try to save some money for this purpose. It seems as if, how do we prioritize? You made a commitment that we were going to have a lawyer, we were going to have expert witnesses and so forth. We knew this a year ago, so now we're coming around and we say, if you want this thing, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, you're going to have a referendum. And I say that, we should use that $100,000 that we had with the accountants. We just found that out within the last few days, and I would say that this is probably one of the ways we would allot the money. But knowing what has happened with the budgets, we probably spent everything to the dollar and over, and we just don't have the money. And that's why we're going into the $100,000.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have one, but unless you want council to finish.
Pardon? Yeah, if you don't mind. Mr. Baker?
I agree with Mr. Hudak, however, it's for some different reasons. I feel that one of the reasons that I was elected in November was because I was opposed to the Wheelabrator Fry project. I don't see any reason to go back out again and ask the public for a reaffirmation of that at a cost of $15,000. I also have a problem with that time of the year, a small voter turnout, possibility of bad weather, and possibility of a very large PR campaign by Wheelabrator Fry. I think it's an important issue, too important to risk on a quick referendum at the bad time of the year. And I think it's already quite clear from the residents of the township that they do want the money expended for this purpose.
I have a comment also, Madam President.
Mr. O'Connor.
What Mr. Baker said was very true, that probably the three of us received a large proportion of votes because we have said throughout the campaign that we were intent on fighting the installation or the development of this resource recovery unit. And we too, as I say, campaigned on that issue and said we would in fact do it. However, I don't think any of us knew the ramifications of the 1983 budget when we were saying that. And last Saturday, when we reviewed the budget, it was pretty clear that that the administration and the council is in fact trying to establish a budget that is as close to a no-rate increase as possible. And my first view of the budget indicates to me that we'd be hard-pressed to find another $100,000. And if we did that, if we did allocate $100,000 in the budget, then certainly some programs are going to have to suffer that we have been, in fact, supplying to the residents of the township for a number of years. So, while the decision's been very, very difficult to decide whether or not we should go to referendum. In fact, I think I've come to the conclusion that, in fact, we do have to ask the voters if they do want to spend the money. We've heard throughout the campaign that voters want us to fight it. But I think it just makes an awful lot of sense to ask people if they do, in fact, want to spend $100,000 on an issue that's going to require a long-term battle. I don't think we can do this $10,000 or $30,000. It probably will take all of $100,000 to do it. So while I don't like doing what I'm doing, I think that's the only thing that we have to do.
I get the feeling that some people think that if you're in favor of the referendum, that you are, not opposed to wheelabrator, but that's not the case. I feel the same way that Mr. O'Connor does. I think it's difficult to find $100,000 in the budget. I think that we should go out, we should ask people, and I'm very confident that people are going to respond and overwhelmingly. They're going to show wheelabrator, they're going to show the county and the state that we're opposed to this project coming to our town. So I would support the referendum, and I think that to cut services, basic services, $100,000 worth of basic services in town is something that people do not also want to have to do. So I think that we'll find that people will support the referendum, and I think it's the way to go.
Mayor Fox?
Well, there's several things. First of all, we did talk about revenues on Saturday, and we did have certified numbers from the auditor, which we didn't have when I presented the budget to you. And it is true that there was $130,000 certified that wasn't there on Monday before we had the auditor's report. But it's also true that on Monday, when I presented the budget to you, we were anticipating $300,000 in revenue from the sale of land, which isn't going to materialize. So instead of having $130,000 of found money, we actually are $170,000 in the hole. Although we think that by adjustments in other places we can deal with that. But we certainly don't have an excess $100,000 to spend. And I really think that the while there is a budget problem, the real point of asking for the referendum is that I have some difficulty in expending that amount of money in this particular area without a sense of the feeling and will of I happen to agree with something that you said, Jerry, at least you quoted in the paper as saying. I don't believe in government by referendum. I believe that the Founding Fathers, when they established a representative democracy, did the right thing, and particularly in these days when government has become so complex and particularly local government is caught up in this morass of laws and regulations that come down from the state and federal government, and the issues are so complex. It's very difficult to convert them into a question which is a simple yes-no question. But in this instance, we have one of the rare instances provided for in municipal government in New Jersey where the opportunity for referendum is clear. There is a procedure established to create it. I think the issue is one which can be reduced to yes-no, a yes-no issue, and it is, of all of the things I can think of, the most appropriate sort of thing to do, especially when we're talking about the sum of money that we're talking about, and especially when, to some degree, that is redundant with expenditures and effort that is going on in other levels of government. The state is reviewing the application, and while many people believe, and I happen to share that to a degree, that the state is somewhat biased and that they are the ones who promulgated resource recovery as a way to deal with solid waste throughout the state, nevertheless they are bound by regulation and law, and they are reviewing it. The county is also reviewing it, has hired consultants, and is making their input. And beyond that, the if the referendum should be defeated, doesn't mean that we just give up and leave the field. It simply means that we must express our opposition to the proposal through our own staff and Mr. Bush instead of a specialist in environmental law. But certainly the staff is well represented in the county review process. We're in touch with the state, and it does mean that our opposition in a knowledgeable way would continue. The securing of consultants and special counsel is, on the one hand, a kind of insurance policy, and on the other hand, a gamble. We have assured people and intend to do everything we can to see this proposal defeated. But everything we can may include spending $100,000 and still have the thing approved. And there's no assurance in expending the money for the consultants and special counsel that we will prevail. So it is a gamble. To the extent that it is redundant with review by other levels of government, it is an insurance policy. It is the way that we are attempting to be sure, doubly sure, maybe triply sure, that the residents are protected. And beyond that, while there seems to be some consensus or some belief that there is a consensus in the community of opposition, I'm not sure there's a consensus in terms of effort. I'm convinced that if you ask most people, are you for RESCO, they'll say no. But if you say, are you for it, or do you think we ought to spend $100,000 to oppose it, I don't know what the answer will be. And so I think for these reasons, the referendum makes sense, and it is, as I said in the beginning, one of the few opportunities that I know of where the question can be reduced to fairly simple terms, and the mechanism exists to easily have a referendum on the subject.
I don't think that this is a simple decision as either side has put forward. First of all, we do not have revenues coming out of our ears. Based on Saturday's look at the budget, and especially the revenue side of the budget, I was doing some calculations over the weekend, and it could appear that we would need to cut, just to be sure, because of the soft revenues and some things that we thought we were going to get in the revenue side that we're not going to get, that we could lose as much as $365,000 on the revenue side of the budget, which means that we would have to cut out $365,000 on the expenditure side unless we come up with additional revenue. Also, taking a look at the budget, it appears that we will have to put in at least $200,000 maybe to make up for some of the line items that might be slightly under budgeted in mandatory expenses, so that while we cut a $365,000 out, we may put another $200,000 back in, which brings it pretty close to half. My problem is right now I don't know where we really are. If I thought, in fact, we really could cut $100,000 out with no problem at all and not substantially hurt ourselves in regard to our revenue side or the mandatory expenditures, I'd be a lot more comfortable. But I also think it's not all that easy to interpret what the results of the election would be. If it is defeated, you could say that in fact the community does not care whether or not Will Greater Phi comes in. But then that leaves us in a position of having no money in the budget to even get the best possible case out of the situation. And there are many things that need to be done, even if we wanted them to come in. And if we were losing a battle, there are still things that could make it somewhat more welcome in the community, and I would want that there no matter what my position was in Will Greater Phi. And a defeat of the referendum would really leave us with no place to go. I'm also concerned about the cost. We have the election cost here. It's $15,530. It seems to me that $15,530 taken out of Mrs. Kitz's account and put into Mr. Bush's account would help us to at least initially begin to pay for the cost of the consultants and the attorneys when the application comes to us. I realized that if the referendum won, that that would be probably an asset to the community, and it would very strongly demonstrate that the community was against it. But when I take a look at all of it and the gamble is against the referendum winning and the referendum losing, and are not having any money on the position at all, I'm not willing to take that gamble, and I'm not in favor of the referendum.
Wait a minute, let me ask a question now, because I think what you're saying is, obviously you're not in favor of the referendum, which means that if we are going to fulfill our promise to fight this as strongly as we said we would, we have to find another $100,000. That's clear.
Well, it'll go down to 85, because we'll take the cost of the referendum out of the budget.
No. No.
Right.
All right, 85, 100, I don't think the numbers are very different, but I don't know where you're going to find $85,000. I just don't know.
You're going to have to cut it out no matter what you do, because the revenue side is not going to support it.
There's going to be a lot of programs that we'll just have to slash at. I understand that.
Right, but I think we're going to have to slash anyway.
I guess I should tell the council that I'm unwilling to spend that money without guidance from the voters, and even if you put it in, there's real question in my mind about whether I'm going to spend it or not. I think we should go to the voters and ask them, and I do not see what all the anxiety about that is. Whether or not the referendum is approved doesn't change our opposition to Wheelabrator one bit.
But
It's
you just said
simply
you wouldn't spend the money if we didn't go to referendum. Why would you spend the money if we lost?
Because then, if it passes, well, I wouldn't propose to spend $100,000 if it lost, by any means. But if it passes, that's a clear indication of what we should do. But I really have a great deal of difficulty with seriously impacting other municipal services in order to expend $100,000 here without guidance from the voters. And I have great difficulty understanding the reluctance to get that guidance. Now, yes, there's a possibility of a low turnout, but it seems to me, as we saw in the school board election last year, where there has been traditionally a low turnout, when there are issues that the voters are interested in, they do turn out. We had over 40% come out in the school board election last year. And I think that there was a real indication of sentiment on the part of the community in that election. If it is a strong enough issue, if it is of sufficient impact and interest, then people will come out. And if they come out and they vote for it, then we know one thing. If there's a low turnout, and if there's a low turnout, whether it passes or whether it's defeated, it doesn't tell us much about the opposition in the community. It simply tells us whether to spend the money or not. But here is the one case where there's a perfect mechanism for doing this. It's built into the law, it's provided for, and I have some substantial difficulty understanding the reluctance to do that. I mean, what's wrong with allowing the voters to tell us what to do in this area?
Mrs. Woodward, just in rebuttal to that, I mean, I've seen so much spending by the mayor. Probably he'll have an all-time high of probably being a mayor that spent the most money in East Brunswick, and now you want to ask them for an extra $100,000, whereby under your administration, you never hesitated to spend millions. And why are you so concerned with the 100,000? Maybe we should have a referendum for a lot of bonding, the same as the Board of Education and things of that type. All you have to look at is the expenditures every year. You didn't have any hesitancy about spending millions and millions and millions of dollars, and at the present time you seem to have a conscience because it's hurting you to spend that $100,000. If you look in that budget, you could come up with $100,000, and basically, let me say this, it may not cost $100,000.
We must be willing to spend $100,000 at any cost, no matter where the money comes from. We can't kid ourselves and say, we'll fight this project with $20,000 or $50,000. We must be willing to put 100,000 out front and say that, yes, we are going to fight this and we are committed to fight. If it only costs 50 or 60, well, that's to our benefit. But we must be willing to go for the full amount. I think also, Mr. Hudak, that the people have said in the past, yes, they're in favor of the bondings and things that we've done in the past, because I think this past election showed that they did support the mayor and the council and voted Democratic once again. I think you have to bear that in mind.
Problem is, as I look at it, and I guess it goes back to the statement that I made that you quoted me, that I basically think we are here to represent the citizens of East Brunswick. And based on what I know about the Wheelabrator Fry application, I think that we need the experts and the attorneys, no matter what the situation is, and that we should spend $100,000 for it. And if it has to come out of the budget, and I don't think it's going to be easy for it to come out of the budget, I think that that is one of the priorities in this budget. And I'm not willing to take the chance because of a low turnout, bad weather, and people who always vote no against any referendum on money, that it's going to be defeated. I think the issue is far too serious for East Brunswick for that to happen.
Well, except that I know that in order to find the $100,000 or the $100,000 plus whatever else we have to find because of the data we now have on revenues, or $100,000 not to turn off some streetlights, which a number of people feel strongly about, or whatever it is. And in order to do that, we're talking about, for example, closing the library one day a week. We're talking about laying off several police officers.
And we find ourselves in economic problems, which hopefully will be the last time in the next decade we have this severe economic difficulty. I think to ask for a cutback, yes, in services or a layoff of a few employees for this 1 year is a small price to pay for ensuring that the $100,000 is paid.
Excuse me, you asked the person whose job is going to be, who's going to give up their job if they think we ought to do it, so that we ought to do this so we can fight Wheelabrator. You ask them that. Is it okay if I fire you so we can fight Wheelabrator? Come on.
All right, Mr. Hudak and then Mr. O'Connor.
I mean, looking, you did mention that there are maybe some alternatives, especially maybe in some of our administrative salaries, which some people are starting to make $51,000. You have here some salaries that have increased $7,940. I'd say that was quite nice for some people. Or some salaries have increased $6,957. Maybe we will be given an opportunity to start stabilizing these administrative salaries. You could pick up, what could you pick up there? $68,000?
That's totally a different issue, and that if we're going to address that, certainly this wouldn't be the time to do it as far as talking about salaries. But again, the approach that I started to take probably Thursday or Friday before we had our first budget meeting was that one of the things that I do not support is turning out half the lights in the township. And the sense that I approached the budget with is that I was going to try and find money to turn the lights back on. To me, that is more of a basic service that everybody deserves, and I just simply feel that folks are going to feel very, very unsafe with half the lights out in the township. And given the indication that we got from the Budget Advisory Committee, from the administration, again, we're talking about revenues, some of them are very soft. The sale of land has fallen through. That's some hundreds of thousands of dollars less in revenue that we're going to be getting. And to find another $100,000 and not cut programs is going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible. And then we're going to have to start looking at things like consumer affairs, which might be $25,000 to $30,000. We might have to start looking at code enforcement, which would be another $80,000 some odd dollars, and then we can make up the difference. But that's two basic programs that an awful lot of residents get an awful lot of mileage out of, because we have, in fact, provided those programs in this township for many years. And residents start to get used to those things, and they are willing to pay for them. And the feeling I had is, let's find out if people do in fact want to spend $100,000 to fight Wheelabrator. Again, I'm not saying that I am for that project. I think we just have to fight it by asking the people if they want to join us in that fight.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
I would just like to reiterate that proceeding in this way is going to mean people's jobs. And, I just hope that the council is prepared to explain to them that, we're sorry, but you don't have a job anymore. Because we were not willing to let the voters decide whether to spend this money or not. It's exactly what it's exactly what you're doing. You're costing people's livelihood by doing this.
I don't think so. I've been taking a look at the figures, and the fact, the budget as submitted was at cap. However, we are dealing with the total, based on the revision of the revenue and the revision of some other things, we're dealing with a totally different budget. And the fact is that even if we were not discussing Wheelabrator Fry at all, we would still have to cut that budget so that we go below cap. And that's the basic question. I think by the time we are done with the budget, we will be below cap, enough then to increase.
Okay, but if you're below cap, then you're going to have to go higher in taxes to do it.
Right. But that's the question. The question is whether or not you're at cap or below cap. And I am convinced that by the time we're done with the budget, we will be below cap.
Well, there's also a question of the tax rate.
But that
you can't do both.
The tax rate will go up no matter what.
If the referendum passes, the tax rate goes up. If you're saying you're going to spend you're going to direct us to spend the $100,000 at 1.08, given all of the other things that we're doing, there's no way of doing that without costing people's jobs. Now, if you're saying,
all I'm talking about is cash. I'm not talking about the tax rate.
Then in that event, you may not be talking about people's jobs.
Right.
But within the constraints of what was presented, you really are.
I find it very objectionable that we come up with a catch-22 situation. One is you're either for increasing the caps or spending the caps, or you're against Wheelabrator Fry. And it's a catch-22. The mayor stated last week that I'm against referendums. Now it's not the case. I'd love to see a referendum on Wheelabrator Fry, no bucks attached. Okay, letting that work. It may be too late here. I would also love to see a referendum on the budget. Hey, pass it or not, you're going to proceed to do that, but divorce the two of them. That's fine with me. Or if you're going to split out $100,000 items, we got $14 million budget, you got 140 items of that nature you can split out. Let's put raises in there instead of Wheelabrator Fry. The mayor saying he's worried about laying somebody off. That's real life. You got to prioritize. In industry, no problem. Guys here 30 years, you're hurting, he goes. My business right now, next year, we're budgeting for increase for salary employees 0 for the entire year. That's the economy. So I think we must prioritize it. I think it's important we go with the Wheelabrator Fry, but it's crazy to put it as a catch-22 situation. We, the Republican Party, will fight it as this thing with that.
Two thoughts that I'd like to share. I had the privilege, I guess it would be, of reading the Conheim and Ketchum report. Conheim and Ketchum report was a report done by Conheim and Ketchum for Wheelabrator Fry. They were hired by Wheelabrator Fry to go around and interview citizens in East Brunswick. Now, the interesting thing was the citizens that Wheelabrator highlighted that were in favor of their project all had major problems with the application. Everyone's familiar with the scrubber issue, which was an issue until they revised their application. There were many other problems with the application, the way it has been submitted previously and is still being submitted. And if you were to have a referendum which just said, are you going to fight Wheelabrator Fry, you would exclude a lot of people who may be even in favor of it, but still not a single person that I've talked to who is in favor of it is happy with the application the way it exists. I don't think that under any scenario, we would want that incinerator to come in, given the current proposal. There are a lot of things which have to be worked out in it. So I think that under any case, I think you have to be sure to include in the wording or what have you, at the very least, something to the effect that this is not really necessarily to fight Wheelabrator, but it's also to make sure you get the best deal out of it from Wheelabrator. Now, I don't think you could put all of that into the wording, and I don't think you could communicate that in 4 weeks to the voters. Furthermore, Wheelabrator Fry would probably spend $100,000 to get the vote out against it. And I also feel that if the estimate is $15,000 in actual cost to put together the referendum, I'm sure there's a lot of other hidden expenditures. By the time we're finished, it may cost us $25,000 just to gain $100,000. So I have a bit of a problem with the referendum for that reason. The second point I'd like to make does not necessarily concern the referendum at all. It does concern the Wheelabrator Fry application. Right now is a very unique situation for two different governing bodies in the state of New Jersey. One of them is Morris County, the county government, and the other one is the Township of East Brunswick, New Jersey. Morris County has recently said, no, they're not going to have a landfill. No, they're not going to have a resource recovery plant. They said, no, our garbage is going to go to Middlesex County, period, paragraph. Now, it hasn't been challenged in court of law yet. The fight hasn't started. We don't know how long the fight is going to take. We don't know what the outcome of the fight is. However, there's a very bad scenario which could take place. That being, if a plant were to be built in East Brunswick, and very regrettably, it has just come out recently in their, and it is in their proposal, and it was confirmed by Wheelabrator that they could very quickly double the size of that facility. You have a situation where you have a facility that is taking half of the garbage, the other half is going to a landfill in our town. The landfill life would be expiring. They could very quickly put on a second half of the incinerator, double the capacity, and now you've got a system that would handle the garbage from out of county. The problem is with the state people. Once they've made the decision to put that incinerator in East Brunswick, and Morris County hasn't committed to build anything, they've already conceded they've lost the votes in East Brunswick. It's conceded, it's lost already. So once you've lost that territory, to go ahead and put the second incinerator in there, it doesn't hurt them, because they've already lost it. So I think you have to be very, very careful of not only what you're doing in perspective of ourselves here in East Brunswick, but how our plan fits in with what's going on with the rest of the state. We don't want to be in a situation where we're the first ones to go and everyone else backs out along the lines. It has to be a plan where if everyone goes, they all go together, or none of us go. But we can't be the one to work with the government, and it's the state government I'm talking about, while Morris County has just flat out and said, we're fighting it no matter what. And they fight the battle, and the bottom line is we lose.